start to turn it around.
If we all could love one another, all the world could be as one. Just take time to love one another, all the world could be as one. Black man, white man, standing together, no more fighting to be done. Yellow, red man, dancing together, all the world could be as one.
And welcome to Heal DC. Today is Monday, January 22nd, and this is Joni Eisenberg. We are continuing to honor Dr. Martin Luther King throughout the month of January. A lot of us were calling it Martin Luther King Week last week, but we're still going to be thinking and honoring and talking about his discussion of three evils: racism, poverty, and militarism. We'll be discussing all three of those today on this show. And we are excited to have our first guest. We haven't had him on for a while, and that is we're going to give him a magic drum roll, and that is Trayon White, the council person for Ward 8. Welcome, Trayon. Councilmember White, I should call you.
Good morning, Joni. Good morning.
Glad to see you. Glad to hear you. As I just mentioned, I was so excited to see you last week and see that crowd at the Martin Luther King annual Peace Walk and Parade. And we are definitely going to be back there in person next year. But share with us a little bit, Trayon. You know, we always hear the bad news, but we don't hear some of the really great things that happen in Ward 8. So share a little bit about how you felt last Monday at that Peace Walk.
Well, first of all, I was cold, but I was encouraged. First of all, I think it's an honor and privilege to celebrate the life work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. here in Ward 8, on Martin Luther King Avenue, intersecting with Malcolm X Avenue, also Marion Avenue. One of the things I was excited about to see the young people. Young people are in different schools who are singing, dancing, learning, doing poems, just expressing their gifts, and sometimes they don't get the platform to show it. And we've seen some of that this past week in the Martin Luther King Parade and Peace Walk. They came out, some of the bands, which we haven't seen in a long time, from all over the city, came out to show their talent and also to give out information and education about who Dr. King was, who he is, and what his message was here when he was in the earth.
Absolutely, and you really had to be there in person to see. Not only are they talented, but you could feel the vibrations that they were really truly honoring Dr. King. It was just really something to see all those different bands and dancers and musicians and everything. It was wonderful. So. We're going to ask you, of course, about your priorities for Ward 8 this year, but maybe before we get into some of those tough issues, if you want to share anything else about what you're proud about in Ward 8. Again, we don't hear the positive things.
Well, one of the things I'm happy about is we starting the process of building a state-of-the-art healthcare facility, which is a new Cedar Hill hospital, right? We're long overdue. We face a number of trauma. We have some of the highest health disparities in the country per capita in Ward 8. And so now we're going to build some of the healing circles, some of the trauma-informed care services in Ward 8. We do have a new urgent care center on MLK. So we've been talking about it over the years, and now we're finally building it out. The urgent care facility has been open for over a year. The hospital is under construction. I just did a walkthrough last week. We are building 6 new recreation centers. 5. We completed one already in Ward 8.
Right.
So we've done a number of things as far as infrastructure, give people different outlets and just sources of comfort and just stuff for people to do in the ward. So we started down that road, Joni.
Absolutely, and those rec centers are really needed. So that's good news. And anything else you'd like to say about the resilience of folks there in Ward 8, despite all the challenges?
Well, historically we've been a phenomenal people, and we have a sense of community that has not been lost. It's not what it used to be, but it is a warrior cry sometimes when we have to come together to accomplish a mission. We've seen it over the years, even with naming Marionberry,
That's right.
Go Hope Road. You're right. Some people were against it, but then the people came out during the petition phases. The organizers organized, and people came together, and we showed our strength in getting that name out to one of our great warriors here in DC. And we face our challenges in the other part of the ward, but we've been resilient in supporting the families during these crises, coming out of the pandemic, just addressing some of the social ills and getting people more economically sound. And that's my new, and not new, but I'm really focused on that in this new season, the economics of people in Ward 8, so we can survive the wave of gentrification and just the increase of income, just living, the increase of living in DC that's growing every day.
Absolutely, and I know you helped to lead an effort around poverty, a proposal. I'm not sure.
Yep, I opened up the Commission on Poverty to study how we can combat poverty, and we've put people on that board. People who are working class and in poverty, came out of poverty, is doing phenomenally well. Also, I believe that some people haven't been able to thrive with their businesses because of, one, information education, and second is access to capital. And so I started the Dream Grant a few years ago, that the money got put into DSLBD to give local entrepreneurs who had an idea or who had a business access to capital from the government. Also, I just started the Ward 8 SIF, which is a community investment fund through DC CDC that gave out grants and also gave out partner with banks to give out loans to help build their business credit. Just last year, we're doubling those numbers again this year, which our grant will be coming out in the next 90 days. So we have been keen on that here in the Great Ward 8.
Wow, that's great. And Chuck, if you're in and you want to ask Councilmember White a question.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chuck. How you been, man? Happy New Year.
Good. I got one question. As a member of the council, as we look across the city and the challenge of crime from a citywide perspective, what do you suggest to be done?
Well,
not just in Ward 8, but across.
I'm glad you said it like that. Not just in Ward 8, but across the city, because historically, the violence has been isolated to a large degree to certain pockets of the city. Mostly East Anacostia River and other pockets across the city. But, with anything, if you don't address it, it spreads. So now it's an epidemic of crime throughout the city. I've been watching the data. As almost every major city's crime has gone down. DC has consistently gone up because we haven't taken it seriously. I'm going to just say it. When we take it seriously, there'll be calls about it. There'll be meetings about it. There'll be budget items itemized to address the crime. There'll be wraparound services. There'll be focus improvement areas. We'll be really taking it serious. When we, let's take, for example, January 6th, right? We knew that was coming. We had meetings every single day about the potential insurrection before it happened. We had all the local police departments, the federal government, police agencies. We had all these different people on a call every day. When the pandemic happened, we had calls every day. We had a special task force designed to focus on what the studies, what it meant, the outcomes, how to remedy it, how to get people involved. It was a budget item. We're not doing that for crime. We do spots in, like, for example, building blocks. We talked about that 3 years ago. I haven't heard about it in 2 years, right? We talked about the one's office being suited to address some of the social ills with some of the highest crime areas and with some of the high potential individuals. Yet we're still waiting for the cohort to start with safe passage, and even the providers have not been funded yet. And so until we take it serious, the crime will continue to grow in our city. And I'm going to continue to ring the bell that we have to do more to give people opportunities. We have to address the mindset and the social ills of our people that are coming up. We, as I say, we never fully recovered from the crack epidemic that criminalized and locked up a lot of the black men. We have a lot of broken families, and we have to get two-parent households back into the community, have to have healing circles back into our communities.
Healing circles, that's right. And on this show, Trayon, as you probably know, we do talk to a lot of the people involved with violence prevention, including Tyrone Parker, Alliance of Concerned Men. And one of the things that Tyrone always talks about is learning from what worked in the past. because in the past there were successful strategies that really helped to reduce the violence. And I'm sure you're on board with that.
Yeah, it's crazy because I was speaking to two, Durkee, and I was also speaking to Cody, who works in Ward 5, and the violence interrupters have been removed out of some of the schools. Like when I did violence prevention work years ago. You know this, Joni. That was the work I did with my nonprofit and through working with ERCP, and we were in the jails, in the schools, in the community. And so while we appreciate the safe passage workers that stand outside, they don't have the relationships with the kids inside the school. They don't know if a fight happened in the cafeteria during the day. They don't know if somebody was struggling with mental health while in the school today. They don't know if there's a text message going around about a potential fight after school, right? And so there's some disconnectivity between the community and the schools that I've been talking to the deputy mayor about, that has not happened yet, right? We have to get individuals from the communities inside the schools because teachers are there to teach. Some of the teachers don't have the tools or the culture competencies to deal with the violence that's spurring over into the schools. And so we have to mend the community with the schools, which we haven't done yet. I've been ringing the bell ever since.
That's right. And of course, the teachers, we used to have the teachers union on with us a lot, but not lately. But I know that there are some struggles with the teachers getting, and the schools getting funded appropriately as well. And of course, when you think of schools, you think of a lot of different things. But one, of course, is literacy. And, you know, again, in the nation's capital, we should have a much better rate of people being able to read. And so how is that coming, Trayon? Is that what would you like to see around building up the literacy levels in Ward 8?
Well, not just Ward 8 across the city, because what I do not only impacts Ward 8, but it impacts all students from all ages throughout the city. The data shows that the literacy rates the illiteracy rates has increased across the city during the pandemic and even more so after the pandemic. And so there were a few bills introduced on the council that I supported that focus on getting more mentors, tutors inside the schools to figure out where the gaps are and closing those gaps. I think that not just literacy as far as books, financial literacy, right? We are in a place where I feel like DC is shying away from supporting residents who are working class and poor, right? And we haven't created what is cloned as the pathway to the middle class. Like, because if you look at it, those who have been poor in DC have gotten poor. Those who have been wealthy or rich in DC have gotten wealthier. The wealth gap between blacks and whites in DC is 81%, and it hasn't closed. So we have to be intentional. We have to stop the rhetoric and put our money where our mouth is. And I think that there are some bills that need to get funded. And when we talk about youth, I'm introducing a bill that empowers youth to be their own peer mediators inside their school that's going to pay them while they're in school through DOES, through Office of Out of School Time, to eradicate violence in their schools. And I think that we have to start getting money out the door. I was at a youth summit last week over at the Thurgood Marshall Center up Northwest, 12th Street Northwest. And the kids was like, man, they don't have a lot of faith in the summer job because they're not even making minimum wage. And I was like, dang, we talking about Department of Employment Services, hearing from kids that are upset that they're not even getting enough money to sustain themselves and help their family. And if another job did that, then they will be considered doing wage theft. And so we have to put our money into creating avenues to wealth, mental health services, wraparound services to get stability for this next generation.
Absolutely. And I was glad to see that you were in that youth summit last Wednesday night. I know that Plymouth Congregational Church and young people helped to organize that. And it seems like there needs to be more opportunities for young people to speak and let the adults know what's on their minds.
Yep.
So,
Councilman, one quick question: what's the status of seniors in Ward as well as in the city?
That's one of my priorities. So what you say that again?
The status of seniors.
I'm asking about the seniors in the city and in Ward 8. What's their future?
Well, that's a great question. We have a growing number of seniors here in Ward 8. In fact, we're having a senior social coming up February the 12th here in Ward 8 to listen, to pamper to, and cater to the needs. I was riding in the car during the Christmas break, and I had two seniors in the car, and I shed a tear when one of the seniors told me that they were only getting. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
They were only getting $32 and $34 in food stamps or SNAP benefits. That's criminal in the city, right? Where the price of living is going up. We just passed a bill that we pushed to get funded to increase the amount of money that people can get in SNAP, because, you know, if you got to choose between getting your medicine or your food, it's really not an equitable decision. I think we have to, one, build more housing. I'm building 2 more new senior living facilities in Ward 8. One is going to be in the Reunion Square project. I partnered with then Attorney General Carl Racine to reduce the rents through a lawsuit at the Reunion Square property. We took some money from one pot and I legislated to go into services for seniors. I'm building a new senior wellness center in Ward 8 in the back of Kramer Middle School.
Oh, wow.
We have to double down and triple down on access to amenities and resources for those who've paved the way for people like me to have the opportunity to even be a council member here in the district. And I think that we can do a lot more with the resources we have available.
Wow, that's great. There's going to be a new senior wellness center. That's definitely good news. And Trayon, I wish there was a way, or Councilmember White, I wish there was a way that we, a lot of people could just mobilize and support you and support other council members who are addressing some of these needs around gun violence, around poverty, around problems with the youth, and you know, to show our solidarity with what you're doing.
Well, you can, and we need you. I think that the power is in the people, and the more I met with my ANCs about 3 weeks ago, and trying to get them to see that I work for you guys, and we work for the people. Well, we have a unified agenda with a unified budget, with some unified action items that we can all figure out what we can push towards to move the needle, right? I can't do it alone, Jonah. You can't do it by yourself. Mr. Hicks, you can't do it. So we have to do it together. And we need everybody, not just Ward 8, but across the city with a unified agenda that we can move the needle to create equity and inclusion with our city services and with this big dollar budget. Because quite frankly, I think the city going to be in trouble, right? We anticipating revenue loss and the budget dropping in the course of the next couple of years. And if we are not giving out these services, like we're talking about, just last week we had to fight to get service open for ERAP, emergency rental assistance, that we fought to get in the budget, and people are facing and getting evicted every day because the money hasn't been distributed. Like, it's once it open, people are having a hard time getting in, and it's closing, and it's saying it's full, and they got to wait another couple of months to apply again. While eviction notices and court dates are coming up every single day, right? And I just think that we are going backwards when it comes to services for Black and brown people in the city.
That's true. That's absolutely true. When you say that the budget may be reduced, what's the reason? What would be the reason for that?
Well, financial officer already is anticipating revenue drop because DC's downtown is struggling with coming out the pandemic. As you know, a lot of the federal government workers did not fully come back to work for a long time. Some of the businesses have closed down downtown, trying to figure out what to do with some of the vacant buildings downtown. Then you have the threat of Monumental Sports moving its operations out of the city through the Capital One building. And so that's going to have an economic impact on the city. I think it has serious conversations. I know the mayor has created this task force with Debbie Rittner, and I think that we have to focus on how to keep downtown vibrant, because those tax dollars enable do what we do across the city. We haven't done that when we had the wealth or the highest budget in DC history last year. What do you think we're going to do when we losing revenue for the people who need the city and the resources the most? And we're not talking about a handout. We're talking about a hand up and creating programs, an avenue to what is called the pathway to the middle class. Got to make it real.
Absolutely, and certainly Marion Barry created a lot of programs that we're still benefiting from, and that's certainly what's needed now. Statehood, and in a moment, Councilmember White, we're going to give a tribute to a recent ancestor by the name of Royal Height. Was very active in the statehood movement. We're going to play a song that he wrote, Taxation Without Representation. And it seems like we're still not getting any closer to statehood in the District of Columbia. Is that what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we got to increase our fight, and with statehood, it catches the momentum for a moment, but it dies down. We have almost 680,000 residents here in the district. We need to, and our fight is just across the street. We need to put more money into the budget to ensure that we can have the ability to organize, that we have some action steps that people can get on board with, can get a petition signed, can take action downtown. It's too much lip service and not enough action around the city. Like you hear about statehood for a while, then it dies down. You hear it again, and it dies down. So if we're not as a local body taking this seriously, then Congress not going to take it seriously. I think that we've gotten more members, congressional members signed on than ever, but we have to keep chipping away at it because, when elections come up, new members join, and so we got to keep chipping away at it with a laser focus on it. And I think this election is going to be critical. I know we have Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton on the ballot, some of the shadow representatives on the ballot as well, so it's going to be a critical time for the city in this 2024 election.
Absolutely, and we need to continue to build that movement for statehood. That movement's been around for a long time, but we need to increase our efforts. Are we just about out of time, Councilmember White? Any final words? Well, go ahead on if you want to share some more things, but you got to come on more often with us.
Yes, I do, and I will. I want to thank you guys for having me. Dr. King said unity or non-existence. We have to realize that the problems that are facing our city is our problem, not just you or their problem. And the moment we realize that, we're able to chip away at it and come together to figure out solutions. I've been committed to this work for over 20 years, even in my teens. And so and on the spirit of my ancestors, we must continue to stand in the gap, the fight for equity and inclusion in Washington, D.C. And D.C. is moving far away from doing what's right when it comes to services for Black and brown people. So we have an uphill battle to ensure that our policies, our budget, and the direction we're going in is including everybody to build the DC that we want to be inclusive. So the struggle continues. Don't just stand there, do something. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Trayon. You can stay on to listen to this song. I don't know if you knew Royal Height, but he wrote some great songs about statehood. He wrote songs about 100 Fathers was one of his recent songs. Wrote songs about Black Lives Matter. Did you ever meet him? Maybe. No,
I'm not familiar with them.
Yes, and we have two ancestors that are having services this Saturday, and that's Royal Height and Baba Odunu. I think you probably have met him.
I know Baba Odunu, good man.
Yes.
I miss him so much. I'll be there.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Trayon White, thank you so much, and we hope to see you again soon. It was great to see you at the Martin Luther King parade, and again, we are all thankful that Marion Barry's spirit is still very present with us each and every day.
I got his posters right here in my office. Marion Barry, and I got William Lockridge behind me.
Yes.
Yeah, the spirit of our champions alive and well in this city, and educate our kids and our young people about who they were and what they represented.
Absolutely, Marion Barry is still with us, and he was part of the PFW family too. So we're proud of him, and we are proud of you, and we'll talk again soon. And now let's hear that song, Royal Height. About here we go.
Thank DC Statehood today for inviting me here to sing the DC theme song, Taxation Without Representation. There are 3 versions available. One is the R&B version, which I'll be doing today. The second one is a line dance version. And finally, there is a go-go version. But today we'll be doing the R&B version. All right, let's do it. Taxation without taxation without. It can be right for everyone else, but wrong for you and me. Everywhere in the USA except Washington, D.C. We even go as far to fight for voting rights and democracy around the world, and overlook our nation's capital. More than a century, we ain't been heard. There's something wrong with taxation without. It's wrong. Let me hear you say taxation without. How long? We pay taxes, obey law like everyone else. So tell me, why can't we vote? The only city in this nation without a voice, and that's no joke.
Okay, you're listening to Heal DC. This is Joni Eisenberg with Chuck Hicks, and we just heard Royal Height, a recent ancestor who left us about 2 weeks ago. I just heard this morning that he was a member of the group, the legendary singing group, the Orioles. And he was a native Washingtonian. His service is going to be this Saturday, 11 a.m. at Mount Carmel Baptist Church, which is 901 3rd Street Northwest. Again, that's this Saturday, January 27th at 11 a.m. Some of the songs that I've heard him sing, 100 Fathers, is a beautiful song, which I'm sure we will play in the future. Black Lives Matter, he sang about police brutality, and he was very much a part of our community. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, and of course I didn't know that would be the last time I saw him. He handed me a beautiful song, which we'll eventually play, but we're going to keep his spirit alive with us here on WPFW Radio. We're going to move now into our next segment. We're going to be talking about, as everyone knows, Dr. King talked about the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. We're going to be focusing on militarism now in this next half hour with a member of an organization called Faith Strategies, Reverend Patti Spears, and we're going to be introducing Patti in a moment. But to best introduce her, we have our own Devin Walker, who's been on this show with me for for decades. But we call him Uncle Devin. He does beautiful children's music, and we're going to hear Magic Mike a little bit of this new song that he has created, Move the Money.
In national news, the official poverty rate remains steady at 11.5%, with 37.9 million people in poverty in 2022, according to the Federal Census Bureau. Despite these numbers, more than two-thirds of the U.S. House of Representatives voted in favor of increasing the Pentagon's budget to a record $886 billion in annual military spending.
Hey, Congress, we demand from you, move the money. And the president needs to hear this too. Move the money. Both parties playing us like a fool. Move the money. We want to feed the people, yes we do. Move the money. We got the students, the teachers, the pre-K, the seniors. The budgets are cut, so teachers are leaving. The music and arts, the students, they want it. But just like free lunch, politicians, they cut it. So Congress can give more money for war that makes the rich richer and increasing the poor. So don't you dare laugh, cause it's not funny. We have to organize to move the money. Hey Congress, we demand from you, move the money. And the president...
And we are premiering this new song by Uncle Devin. We're going to hear the end of it as we go out today, and you're going to be hearing the song also tomorrow with on Netflix show. But we have a moment, Devin, before we begin our conversation with Reverend Patti. Just tell us in one sentence or so about this song and how proud you are of it.
I'm happy to be able to share this in the rich tradition of go-go music. This song is not only talking about about the out of control military spending that's going on in this country and the lack of money that's not coming back to social services, as Council Member Trayon White had mentioned, but it also honors the great Junkyard Band in their 1986 song, The Word, that also was talking about a similar issue when they were saying Reagan making bombs. So one of the best ways to honor them is to continue in their legacy. So I created this song that can help educate people about what's going on in one of the three evils that Dr. King talked about, and that's militarism.
Absolutely. And so you can hang in here with us, Uncle Devin Walker, as we have this discussion about where we are with this horrific genocide that's going on in Gaza. And of course, they are using our money to kill these, it's now up to at least 25,000 people. That's not counting the people under the rubble, at least 10,000 children. And again, our money, including our money, when in the District of Columbia, we don't even have a permanent right to really vote. So welcome, Reverend Patti Fears, with Faith Strategies. First, before we talk more about Gaza, just introduce yourself a little bit better than I just did.
Okay, well, great. First of all, I'm so glad to come in on that song. That was wonderful, Uncle Devin. I appreciate that. I really do.
Yes, wait till you hear the end of it. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, man, I need to get a copy of just that beginning right now. Right now, I'm telling you, that is fire. Well, my name is Reverend Patricia Fears. I am the pastor of the Fellowship Baptist Church and have been associated with Faith Strategies since its conception. And I can't even tell you how long ago, because it seems like we've been out in the streets moving and doing what is necessary.
And of course, Faith Strategies, one of the key people in there is our own, I'm going to call him our own, Reverend Graylin Hagler, who's heard often on this station with us.
Absolutely. The founder and visionary for Faith Strategies that brought together a group of clergy throughout the city to bring that element, that faith, that spiritual element into the argument. Because everything we know cannot be done just through politics and hopeful thinking. Some of it comes from a higher source, which we need to engage on a regular basis.
Absolutely. So I know one of the main goals of Faith Strategies is to really organize and mobilize the faith community and, of course, particularly Black ministers, to speak up and particularly organize and speak up against this genocide.
Oh, absolutely. That is our latest mission, and it has been going really well. I think once we get the information out, the correct information, the non-filtered, the stories, the lies, the slant, then people start seeing what it is. People in the faith community, we're fighting against a lot of the Zionist impressions and that narrative. But people, what happened October the 7th is not the same situation now. And people are starting to see what we have been saying, that there are some real solid issues here that have to be addressed. And like in my Christian tradition, you cannot take our language, you cannot take our faith narrative and twist it into a political agenda for genocide.
Absolutely. And we've been talking a lot about Gaza since October 7th, but you're going to share some new perspectives and new mobilizations right here in the city. But before we talk about what Faith Strategies hopes to do in terms of the DC City Council speaking out and our own Eleanor Holmes Norton taking a position against this genocide, let's talk for a few moments about a very important and exciting summit that took place in Chicago over Martin Luther King's birthday weekend, which was just last weekend, called the Emergency Summit for Gaza. and that was convened by Rainbow Coalition and the Arab American Institute. I was able to watch quite a lot of it, but you were there together with Reverend Hagler. So share with us some of the important developments that came out of that summit, or anything you'd like to share.
Oh, absolutely. It was a wonderful, powerful summit. It had originally been hoped to had happened before the end of the year. Then when changes needed to be made, it was critical that it take place during this King holiday because there's such a deep connection. There were government politicians. There were, people from, representatives and many faith leaders. Of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson was there. Cornel West. We had Jamal Bryant, who had just come off of an amazing service in celebration of the Palestinian issue, and really kind of hungered down to talk about one thing, which is a ceasefire. And that was the main thing, is to call for a ceasefire. The two charges that the summit wanted us to make sure that we brought home wherever our homes were and people were converging from around the country was that we called for a ceasefire and we called for humanitarian aid. And when we talk about ceasefire, we want to make it crystal clear on what it was and what it was not. We talked about the fact that we understand the atrocities that took place on the 7th were not to be acceptable. Death by anybody, to anybody, is considered a loss that is devastating for communities. So we're not picking a side. But we also understood that this was not an unnoticed, just like earlier in the broadcast when Councilmember White was talking about the knowledge that the city had of the insurrection. The Israeli government had knowledge that there was going to be this issue that took place. But the reality is that we had been sitting down for too long and not dealing with the problems. The summit had some of the most exciting people that came to bring forth some initiatives that they had done in their cities, that the messages were getting out. We learned more about various protests. And of course, there was the huge rally here in Washington on the 13th, while we were still in the summit in Chicago trying to get out of town. On the 13th, Freddie Haynes, who was with us and the new president of PUSH, who was with us on Friday, came to be here in Washington for the rally on that Saturday, along with Cornel West, who was with us on Friday. And then he too came down to be with it. We learned about so many young people on campuses. You can get rid of the campus presidents, but you can't get rid of the agenda of moving forward what is right. And so the young people were speaking of how they were moving forward with the protests. We learned how it connects to our community, even though a lot of our politicians don't want to believe that, that proximity, well, it's not in my backyard, so it's no big deal. I got my own problems over here. We saw it as a bigger issue. And we were able to start looking at how we could develop strategies around bringing that message across so people could really see that it isn't just something that's taking place over there. It is something that took place here. It is something that took place in South Africa. It's something that's taking place in Yemen and in the Congos. We know that this is the same cruel imperialism, this Zionism that is taking place there, that is about oppressing people and taking over their land. In Washington, we would call it gentrification.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a moment, we're going to move into a very important issue that Faith Strategy is involved with, and that is organizing and demanding some response from the City Council and from Eleanor Holmes Norton. But before we move into that, just give us an idea how many people attended that emergency summit. I'm thankful that I watched it online. I haven't heard anybody talking about it on PFW or even on Democracy Now! But it was I was frankly even surprised at how powerful it was, the cross section of people. So just tell us a little bit how
many. And we knew that there was going to be some the attendance was going to be impacted because the anticipation of blizzards in Chicago. Anytime you're talking about Chicago in January, February, it could be a little dicey. So there were a few hundred people, and I would say easily, 2 to 3 that were in person at the event that made their way despite the weather. And then there were just 2-3 times that online that were engaging with us in real time.
Yes, and one thing, for those of us who remember the days of the Vietnam War, we used to have more national movements, and even though there's a lot of movement around this issue, we don't always have kind of an umbrella group. And maybe this will move us a little bit more into that, into the idea of having a national coordination of this movement. I want to also bring Devin in as well because Reverend Patti, Devin is also very much of an activist, and in his song, he gives a lot of statistics and facts about the role of the weapons industry, etc. And once Devin answers that, we're going to jump into the issue of the DC City Council and what's happening, and with Eleanor Holmes Norton as well. But Devin, you want to just share a couple of words that you have in that song about the role of the weapons industry, etc.
Sure. And again, thank you so much, Reverend Fears, for your work, and I will be in contact with you. But when we look at the military, one of the things that people don't realize was in November 2023, the Defense Department, for the 6th year in a row, failed an audit. That means they did not fail. Matter of fact, they've never passed an audit. And they get close to $3.9 trillion, really since 2018. But they can't account for $1.9 trillion of that. That's more than was spent in the federal discretionary budget, and of course, half of that money goes to corporate weapon contractors who's really profiting off of this. W.E.B. Du Bois told us about that over 60 years ago, and so. Part of what I wanted to do was in our song was to make sure that it was very clear that people understood that there are 750 U.S. military bases in over 80 countries. That's a lot of places. The U.S. is the #1 supplier of guns that ends up in our streets, killing our daughters and our sons, because much of these resources go right back into the local police forces that is causing a lot of the problems that we have now. So I just wanted to have this fun way of really bringing that beat, that DC crank, having that underneath there to be able to continue in this tradition that the great Junkyard Band started years ago. And that to me is very important to be able to merge our cultural and our political expressions this way.
Absolutely. And, we hear rightfully so about AIPAC and the amount of money that they spend buying off the politicians, et cetera. But we don't quite hear enough about those weapons manufacturers that are dropping, I think the first week or last week, 50 bombs a week or something like that. And we need to have those details very present each and every day, how much money the military, of our money, the military spend to kill. And as much as I've known about this for a long time, it's still horrifying and it's still hard to really accept that these are human beings, supposedly, that are doing all this killing. And we don't have food to eat in this country. People don't have places to live. Our schools need to be improved, etc. But let's talk about what we can do in this city and what is being done around the country. And Reverend Patti with Faith Strategies, there are quite a number of cities around the country that have passed resolutions, ceasefire now resolutions. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I want us to know that 80% of all weapons that are being used to annihilate the people in Palestine come from the United States. So it's like 80%. That's insane. Here in Washington, because we know that there's a direct connection, and if we're not sure, I think that we had just heard earlier in the broadcast, earlier today from Melvo, as well as from the city council member Trayon, that we're in trouble here in Washington. There's food shortages with SNAP. We just were able to expand that just a little bit, but you're talking about nothing. We're under occupation. And so it is a DC problem. Yes, there's violence in the city, but Uncle Devin just told us, because the weapons that we are producing are coming back home to annihilate us. So we're asking for our city council to join the other 40 councils in this country and growing, I want you to know, to put forth a resolution to cease fire now, to stop the killing now, and then let's start talking about how we're going to release the hostages, how we're going to release the detained Palestinians that are just detained for no reason whatsoever. So we're asking for a simple resolution that says we want to cease fire now and we want humanitarian aid to be sent over. I mean, if we're going to be spending all this money, and as you just heard from Uncle Devin, unfettered money, we have no idea where this money is going. Half of it isn't even showing up where it needs to show up. You've got 200 trucks, and you need 2,000 trucks of water to actually help people. So the aid that we're even, talking about is not even reaching the people that it needs to reach. But we could still continue to put all of these resources into eliminating them. We're asking people to call, write, show up to your council person and support them, because there is a terror factor that comes in place. Nobody wants to be accused of being anti-Semitic.
But and Reverend Patti, I'm sorry, we're almost out of time. I hate to say that, but okay. we need to really look at why is it that the DC City Council seems terrified. They'd say things like, "Give me a break." They don't want to take a stand. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, but Eleanor Holmes Norton, coming out of the Civil Rights Movement, coming out of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, spending time in Mississippi, we need to pressure her to say something. She's not saying a word, and nobody else on the city council is saying anything. And I'm sorry, we need to mobilize. We can't. The city council is at fault, yes, but we also need a mobilization and an organization to demand that the city council and certainly get the chair of the city council to say something. And it shouldn't be on the backs of the new city council people only, but those who have been around for a while. So we're almost out of time. But how can people get in touch with you, Patti? Or what are you requesting that people do?
If you go to faithstrategies.org, you will be able to click on get a already developed notice, so you don't even have to write it yourself, but get the address of Phil Mendelson, because he's our chair, to make sure that he gets the information. He knows that it's there. He's trying to stay away from the controversy, but we don't need leaders that aren't willing to go face to face with controversy. And I'm sorry, you cannot come and start quoting Dr. King, even Marion Barry, and talking about all of these things that you're doing. And then when it comes down to all the people, you go absent and you go quiet because you're afraid of the money.
And if he wants to stay away from controversy, he better stand up for stopping genocide. And we cannot allow that. Marion Barry would be the first one out there in those streets. So we need a movement, and we all are responsible. We know how to do this, folks. We know how to mobilize. We know how to protest. We need to start protesting at some of those, the head of the city council and Eleanor Holmes Norton. I'm sorry to say it, but and Devin, I'm sure you support me in that. Devin's on mute. So again, we're just about out of time. Patti Fears, tell again what listeners should do, and what about people from the DMV and from Ward 9? Should they also?
Absolutely, because they have a responsibility to their elected officials as well, to demand a ceasefire, to put forth a resolution so that our country knows that it's the citizens that are running this country and not just this handful of political leaders. They're representing us. And what we're saying is now is the time to stop the genocide, and let's move forward with a real agenda for hope and healing. So we're asking again, if you go to faithstrategies.org, you'll get the information, the toolkit in hand, so you could use everything that you need to do. If you're out on Ward 9, go to
I'm sorry, Reverend Patti. We just have a minute left. Okay. I just want to make one other announcement that this Friday, Westminster Jazz Church is celebrating its 25th anniversary. Friday night, we're very excited about that. And again, this Saturday, as well as the homegoing or celebrations of life for two people in our community, two giants, Baba Odunu, his service is at Union Temple Baptist Church Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then also at Royal Heights is Mount Carmel Church from 11 o'clock on. Devin, we're going to have 1 minute to play your outro song, outro message from your great Move the Money. We will be having you on. Again, thanks, Mike Nacella. Thanks, Mari. And let's hear the end of this powerful song.
I say we need gun control at the Pentagon. We need gun control at the Pentagon. I say we need gun control at the